The Philadelphia 76ers, a team that is never short of drama in a given season. There is always something going on in Philly, whether it's Ben Simmons being unhappy and refusing to play while demanding a trade, to later James Harden demanding out of the franchise, Daryl Morey and James Harden getting into arguments, Joel Embiid hinting that he's frustrated with his role in the team, Tyrese Maxey calling out Embiid for his lack of leadership and always being late to team activities, going all in by shelling out a max contract to Paul George and then Paul George suddenly forgetting how to play basketball. It is never a dull moment in Philly. Always some kind of drama. Always some kind of storyline. But while we can laugh and joke about the Sixers and the bizarre happenings of their franchise, the Philadelphia 76ers and how this season has started for them, a year in which they had championship aspirations after adding a veteran star in Paul George, they are now walking a fine line of not even being able to compete for a playoff spot with the deficit that they found themselves in. And dare I say it, could be on a path to tearing this whole thing down, going on a fire sale and rebuilding around Tyrese Maxey. And while some are going to say it is way too early and premature to make this video, especially considering the fact that they've been hit with injuries to their key players, specifically their big three of Embiid, PG, and Maxey, the Sixers situation is actually much more dire than you think, despite it being a small sample size to kick off the year, and I'll explain why. Of course, as always, be sure to subscribe if you like this type of content. It would mean a great deal to me. Now, everyone knows the history of the Philadelphia 76ers, or I should say recent history. The Sixers for years were historically bad, setting records for lowest win totals in a regular season, some of the worst net ratings in NBA history. For any team going up against the Sixers from 2013 to 2016 or so, you could almost guarantee you were going to get a win that night. While the Sixers fans lamented at just how bad their team was year after year, the front office and ownership told them to quote-unquote trust the process. Trust that there was a plan in place, a plan to be bad while getting the highest lottery picks and the best chances at landing multiple franchise players and building through the draft to get back to title contention. And even though some of us clown the Sixers during those days, what they did kind of worked because they were able to land multiple top 3 picks. Even though some of those ended up becoming busts, they still managed to hit on one initially, being an all-star and a generational level talent in Ben Simmons. And then, of course, the guy who would become a superstar and one of the better players in the league, a future MVP winner in Joel Embiid. And the Sixers were able to go from being a lottery team to consistently finishing at the top of the East with 50+ wins year after year. But while the process worked, it really only worked to an extent, because despite the Sixers' regular season success and despite their star talent, they ultimately would never make it beyond the second round of the playoffs, and still to this day haven't even made it to the conference finals since that finals run in 2001 led by Allen Iverson. Now, going into the season, the Sixers knew they were under pressure to really make the most out of this window they were currently in, where Joel Embiid was in his prime. Embiid even hinted in interviews from time to time that he wants to win, and if he's not winning here, then he may look to find that elsewhere. And after the Sixers lost Harden, they aggressively pursued the biggest name free agent on the market in Paul George and paid him his 4-year max contract that he was coveting from the Clippers, but the Clippers didn't want to give to him. So now the Sixers had their big three again. In fact, you could argue on paper a more lethal big three than what they ever had with James Harden, given Paul George's two-way ability and his size to impact the game more so paired alongside Joel Embiid. The Sixers would go on and land other free agents to round out the roster like Andre Drummond, Caleb Martin, re-signing Kelly Oubre. They had their team they believed could rival that of the Celtics or the Knicks to win a title. But then, as has commonly been the case over the course of Paul George's career, he wasn't able to start off the season until a week into it, has more recently injured himself yet again. Embiid has also been out of the lineup to start the year, hasn't looked himself since coming back, and then Maxey has also been in and out of the lineup. And while injuries are part of the game and have no doubt played a part in the Sixers' slow start, even still, this team should not be in a place where they find themselves 2-12 to start the year, sitting with the worst record in the NBA. And there are trends concerning things about this team that even the injuries cannot explain. And number one, it starts with the locker room and the overall fit on this team. Of course, by now we've all heard of the team meeting that recently took place where Tyrese Maxey called out Embiid for not showing up on time to team activities and not setting a good example as the leader of the team. Embiid, while taking accountability for that, had also voiced his frustration on his role and how it's not clear what the team is trying to do out there on offense. And I know this is purely speculation and completely just based on what I'm seeing when I watch this team on the court. They really look like they don't want to be there sometimes, almost like they don't enjoy playing together. Disengaged, low energy, poor body language, and it also, again, pure speculation, this has not been reported anywhere, looks like the team doesn't trust Nick Nurse and his system and have kind of checked out on him. So while yes, the injuries are a concern, the potential locker room issues are a cause for concern if you're the Sixers. Here's the other thing. The Sixers recently played their first game with all three of their big three, Embiid, Maxey, and Paul George, even though Maxey was on a minutes restriction and George ended up injuring himself again. But when the three of them were out there, they did not look great together in terms of their general ball movement and flow on offense. It was very much heavy isolation basketball, slow-paced half-court play, your turn, my turn style offense, and of course the Sixers would get killed by the Houston Rockets in that game. The Sixers, as of right now, are dead last in the league on offense. Dead last, even behind teams like the Wizards and the Jazz when it comes to their offensive rating. Their defense isn't much better either in the bottom half of the league, and their overall net rating is 27th. Which also is where they rank in overall pace. Now look, these numbers will improve. It's not like the Sixers with their level of talent are just going to remain at the bottom of the NBA for the whole season. They will start figuring some things out and start playing better. But here's the issue. When you start off the season in that big of a deficit where you're 10 games below 500, it is so incredibly hard to climb out of that hole, especially when this is a roster that really hasn't figured out how they want to play and what their identity is, and will clearly take some time for them to identify what that is. And yes, it's a weaker Eastern Conference, so their poor record can be a bit forgiving since it's early, but 10 games below 500. They've lost 5 in a row, 9 of their last 10. Paul George is likely going to miss more time. Maxey is still on a minutes restriction. It is going to be a steep mountain for the Sixers to climb to even find themselves back into the top 6 of the East to avoid the play-in, because it's not like the teams at the top of the East are suddenly going to go on massive losing streaks. In fact, I would say the Sixers, even being able to get ahead of teams like the Magic or the Knicks, are out at this point. Forget about the Celtics or the Cavs. You're talking about closing out the season winning close to 90% of your games to get to their level based on the fact you've already lost 12 games this early on. But even just to get into the top 6, hell, even to get into the top 8 to avoid single elimination in the play-in, is going to be a situation where the Sixers can't simply be a 500 team from this point forward. No, they have to win at least 57% of their games, going 39-29 to close out the rest of the season to even just finish at 500 for the year. 500 will get you a play-in bid in the Eastern Conference, but you're not going to have a guaranteed spot in the playoffs at that rate. No, for the Sixers to really make headway, where they can actually try and secure home court advantage in the playoffs, they would need to win 65% of their games from here on out for the rest of the season, really going 49-19 to put them on a path to contention. That would give them 51 wins on the year. 49-19 for the rest of the year to get to that mark. I don't see that happening given the current state of this team. And to be honest, I don't even know that it matters. Because even if they were able to dig themselves out of this hole, it's not like they're going to be in a position to make a deep run and the playoffs as a lower seed. So while yes, it is still early in the season, you're also talking about a situation in which the Sixers have already dug themselves so deep early on in the year that they may not be able to crawl out of this. And with the limited window to win a championship with Embiid and Paul George, if the Sixers continue with this slow start, you could very well see them aborting this experiment and going on a fire sale. I would love to hear what you guys think, and let me know if you think the Sixers can recover from this, and also if you think Embiid will still be in a Sixers uniform by the end of the season. Let me know in the comments. As always, be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.